Okay. How's everybody doing? Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And it's great to see everybody. My name is Forrest. I'm here with Dharma Voices for Animals. And I'm going to get to give a presentation tonight about an interesting topic. It's close to my heart. It's animal agriculture and Buddhist ethics and how we can tie these things together. And I'm using two screens. So I've got my presentation on the left, but I wanted to be able to see you guys. So I have my iPad on the right, and you may see me as a person in the audience, but I just did that because this is a lot to present, and I want to make a connection with you guys. So I'm hoping I can kind of watch on the iPad and also present. So, um, but real quick, I know I emailed with Sunyo Biku, who's joining us from Australia. It's amazing. We don't have too many people here. If anyone wants to come off of mute, just say where you're joining from so we can have a little bit of a community feel. That would be great. Sunyo, you want to start?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I actually joined yesterday because it's a day different with Australia. So I was emailing Forrest, hey, why is there no meeting? But I'm happy to to see all of you here now.
Thank
Just
you
want
for
to get a
coming.
bit more in contact with Buddhists who are into this sort of thing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. And we could just go in the order on the screen. Dave, you want to say hi, where you're from?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Dave Tatro. I'm just outside of Seattle in Port Orchard, and I've been following and participating with Dharma Voices for Animals events for a few years now. So really interested in this collaboration tonight. Land of Medicine Buddha is new to me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming, Dave. Katie, you want to go next? I'm not sure if that's the order everyone else is seeing, but
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Katie. I'm the communications director with Dharma Voices for Animals. Very excited to hear this talk tonight. Thank you all for being here. And
beautiful.
I'm located in Vermont, so I'm on the East
Fun.
Coast.
Great. Leah, you want to go next?
Sure, thanks, Forrest. Hi, everyone. My name's Leah. I'm the spiritual program coordinator at Land of Medicine Buddha. I'm really so excited about this collaboration and grateful to Forrest and grateful to all of you for being here. Yeah, I think it's going to be wonderful and an important issue to me and to so many. So glad we're here. Thanks, Forrest.
Thank you for coming. Patricia.
Hi, I'm Pat Housen, Pat usually.
Pat.
And I got introduced to Dharma Voices for Animals at Spirit Rock, which I go to yearly. So I live in San Francisco.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
John B.
Greetings, everyone. John here from Metro Detroit. Been vegan a long time, Buddhist a short time. My friend Dave invited me. Here I am.
Awesome, John. And Michelle, you have your camera off, so if you can't jump in, no problem. I'm glad you're here too. If you want to. Oh, there you are.
Oh, hi. Let's see. I don't know if my husband and I are joining tonight from Palm Desert, California, and we're just really looking forward to the topic and being around this community.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank
you.
you guys for coming. I love Palm Desert. We got some great spots coming from all
We
over the
do.
place. We got Detroit, Vermont, San Francisco, California, all over. Dave, where is it? Dave's from the Pacific Northwest. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, I already forgot, Dave. And Australia. So, and I'm in Pismo Beach, California. I'm on the central coast of California, about 3.5 hours south of Santa Cruz, where Leah is located. So, I really am grateful everyone jumped in and participated a little bit. In the age of Zoom, we can lose that connection that you feel in a room, the electricity that's in a room when you're in a room full of like-minded people. Spiritual energy can be very powerful. So I'm going to try to create that on Zoom for us tonight. And it's not always easy, but getting to hear you guys talk a little bit helps me feel more connected with you. So Yeah, like I said, I'm here with Dharma Voices for Animals, and we're going to talk tonight about animal agriculture and Buddhist ethics. And this is a journey of mindfulness and compassion, something that's very near and dear to my heart. And we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So I've got a missing cursor all of a sudden. Where did that go? Here we go. Forgive me for this collage. I wanted you guys to just kind of get a vibe. And all of a sudden I realized there's 5 pictures of me on this page. But I got to DVA through my job as a park ranger, if you can believe that. So this is my wife, Alexandra, and I. This is us in some of our favorite spots in the desert. That's in Las Cruces on the bottom right, in Pismo Beach with the dogs on both of those. We love the beach. We love the desert. And we got 2 little doggies. My wife and I have been working for the National Park Service for the last 5 years. We started as maintenance workers and finished as park rangers. And the last few years, Pat, we were up in the Marin Headlands. I can see your house on the other side of the bridge there. We worked out at the Point Bonita Lighthouse, which is at the top of the page there, old rickety bridge, which is another whole long story. But I was going to the DVA monthly meditation group, which if you guys haven't gone, I recommend it. It's really nice. Bante runs that, really nice meditation. And I was going to that meeting and I was talking about being a park ranger and how I deliver a very passionate message around the environmental crisis we're facing and the role that animal agriculture plays in this environmental crisis. And also how people clapped and then run away from me, or they argued with me. Even in the Park Service, they weren't too excited about me talking about this topic. So, but Bob saw me and brought me on as U.S. Center's project director. So that's my card down there at the bottom. And so that's how I got to DVA. I just started in this job 5 weeks ago. And I had done some volunteering prior to starting the job, but I'm officially on now and working to plant seeds and to carry the message that Dharma Voices for Animals is all about, which is helping raise awareness of compassion within Buddhist communities and sharing some of the Buddha's teachings. And I want to share a little bit about me. This page is overwhelming me, too much of my face on there, but I want to share with you guys real quick, just so you know who I am. Like, I got pictures of me as a park ranger. I was a personal trainer before that. I was in sales before that. I found Buddhism 20 years ago, not on some philosophical journey, not as like trying to become a more educated person about world religions. I was in a suicidal, miserable depression, and a friend of mine saw me in that hole. And my wife and I had been married for a couple of years, and I had blown my whole life up and ended up in absolute agony on the ground, crying in the fetal position. And a friend of mine gave me a book on Buddhism from the Dalai Lama. So I found Buddhism in the darkest hour, and it saved me. And I loved the Dalai Lama's teachings. Some of them are on metta and loving kindness and compassion. And a lot of it was just about finding ways to focus on happiness through meditation. And I got into it, man. Anything I do to excess. I don't know. That seems to be a common tendency of a lot of people I run into. I love Buddhism because it is so detailed and there's so much to study. But I got really into it. I got a Rinpoche as a teacher for a little bit when I was living up in the Bay Area. And then I was drawn towards Vipassana meditation. I like the simplicity of that after being in Tibetan Buddhism, which I found to be kind of complicated and a lot of layers and visualizations. I thought, okay, what about Vipassana? So I went to Vipassana and really liked the simplicity of meditating. I was living in Mill Valley at the time, so I started going to Spirit Rock, which Pat mentioned. Mill Valley is just right up the street, right over the bridge from San Francisco on the north side of the bridge. So, and I was living there, and I found Green Gulch, which is a Zen center, and I got really into the Zen tradition. And every time I joined a Sangha, I eventually started to wonder more about some of the more basic teachings of the Buddha. And as a park ranger, my job was interpretation. I was an interpretive ranger. There's a couple different types of park rangers. There's the gun ranger and the fun ranger. That's the joke we have in the Park Service. I should say we left the Park Service and I'm on a new adventure now with DVA. So we're no longer park rangers, but we were interpretive rangers. Interpretive rangers wear those flat hats and they tell you stories. And we get to go to the lighthouse. I got to interpret the story of the lighthouse through the environmental crisis being caused by animal agriculture. That's not what a lot of people expected to hear when they went to the lighthouse, but that's how I interpreted the lighthouse. Another person might have just told stories about the sailors and the people that worked at the lighthouse, but I like the idea of interpretation. So when I was at the Zen Center, we were studying a teacher who had come 1,000 years after the Buddha and was giving his interpretation of what the Buddha taught. I got into what did the Buddha teach? There's a book actually called What Did the Buddha Teach? Another that I love by Wapula Rahula, another great book about from Thich Nhat Hanh, The Heart of the Buddhist Teachings. I started diving into that about 10, 12 years ago. And since then, I've really been focused on the precepts. What if I could perfect the precepts? What if I could perfectly grasp the Four Noble Truths? What if I could perfectly practice the Noble Eightfold Path? What would that do for me? And the simplicity of doing those things, I listen to a lot of different teachings as well. Shantideva, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, is one of my favorite audiobooks. I listen to that on the beach as I walk the dogs. Anyway, I've been focusing on the simple things that the Buddha taught. That's where I am today in my Buddhist practice. And I love it. I meditate every day. We practice metta and vipassana. I listen to the Dhammapada daily, and I find the simplicity in there so beautiful because it's so powerful and so clear. And it is what we know, to the best of our knowledge, words of the Buddha, which I like that. So anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a background. I'm not a professor. I am just a dude who struggled with the human realm and found some power in Buddhism. And to this day, it's something that saves my life. So I'm going to move on. That's enough about me. Thank you guys for listening. I want to get into Buddhism now and talk about the powerful beauty of the Buddha's teachings. Whew, I got chills just talking about that. I love the beauty of Buddhism. And I've studied a lot of the history around it. And I put some quotes in here and some pictures. Buddhism is the only major tradition spread across the world without shedding a single drop of blood over 2,500 years. Most religions have a long history of battles and bloodshed, and Buddhism has spread peacefully with one of our primary lessons of compassion and ahimsa, which is the practice of nonviolence. And we are unimaginably fortunate to live as humans in a realm that had a Buddha appear. And the story is that Shakyamuni Buddha was sent here on a beam of light into a very dark and violent realm to help us connect with our hearts and find peace within. And I love the story of the Buddha sitting under the tree in Bodh Gaya. I got a little picture of him here. When he found enlightenment, he was in such bliss and such peace that he thought he's just going to stay here forever. But then he had that nagging feeling that, what about others? What if I could help them? And he reflected on how hard he had worked to find enlightenment and the battle he had gone through with Mara. Mara the temptress. Mara is what represents everything that pulls us away from our Buddha nature. And the Buddha went to battle with Mara, and the Buddha found enlightenment. And he thought for a moment about staying there in peace, in bliss. But then he remembered the lotus flowers in the pond full of mud. And yes, many lotus flowers were underneath the water and they were submerged. They couldn't hear the teaching. Some lotus flowers were just poking above the water and maybe starting to open. And then there were other lotus flowers that were fully above the water and awake. And he thought, some people are just like that, and I will find them and teach them. And I believe from my heart, I was sent here tonight by the Buddhas to carry this message of love and compassion. And I believe that if you're here tonight the Buddha's brought you here too, and that you're one of those lotuses that's above the water. And I shared that same story during my last talk. I really feel karma somehow cleared enough for me to be here tonight and to have this message in my heart and to share this message with you guys. And your karma has also cleared enough for you to be here tonight and to hear this message. So I ask you to listen with an open heart and stick this out with me. This is a challenging task to talk about what's happening today in the world. But I'm going to do my best to present this to you guys in a way that's digestible and clear and concise. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. I want to talk about the Buddha because his experience is something we can learn from. And it's called the Four Sights. When Siddhartha, the prince who had been sheltered, living a life completely pampered. It's a story where the Buddha says, "Nothing but the finest, softest silk ever touched my skin." He was spoiled. The reason he was spoiled was that when he was very young, a mystic gave a prediction to his father, the king, that the Buddha, your son, is a special person. He is a special being. And he's either going to be the king and a powerful king, or he is going to be a powerful spiritual teacher that will change the world. And the Buddha's father, hearing this, oh my God, my son, the prince, could become spiritual. I don't want that. He hid him from the world. Hid the world from him is a better way of saying it. He pampered him and spoiled him and gave him the most lavish lifestyle so that he would want for nothing. Because the king did not want his son to become a spiritual wanderer. But when Siddhartha grew to a certain point of distress and unrest, he wanted to get out. And when he left, it's called the Four Sights. He saw aging, sickness, death, and a wandering spiritual person called an ascetic that had let go of all the worldly possessions. And this completely blew the Buddha's mind. He had never seen a sick person or a dying person. He asked, will my beautiful wife look like this someday? And so he was so shocked that he had an awakening in him. And it's called Sambhega. And that is the spiritual feeling of urgency that the Buddha experienced that night. And this is something I hope we can all connect with tonight, is an urgency needed for the world today. So the Buddha went on to say that his father's love had become a prison. I feel like the same way my parents shielded me from a lot of things when I was a kid, and embracing suffering and witnessing it and bearing witness is a form of love. And the Buddha said, how can I stay here when there's so much suffering in the world? I must do something about it. And the question we can ask ourselves is that, are we being sheltered from suffering by habit, culture, or fear? I know that I was raised in a culture where I was taught to look away from certain things and not look at certain things and don't think certain ways, right? But the Buddha challenges me to think differently than how I was taught. My cultural programming is different than what the Buddha wants, right? So to get into the heart of Buddhism, I love the precepts, the 5 precepts of living the Dharma with integrity: no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants. I like to memorize these things. I say KSSLI. I love the lists in Buddhism. Every Buddhist, no matter what, begins their path here. This is the precept, the foundation, pre meaning the beginning, the forerunner, the prequel to the movie. And I want to talk tonight about how animal agriculture violates all 5 of these precepts, particularly killing and taking what is not given, but it also has other problems with it we can talk about. So the Buddha also taught about living with compassion. And compassion is the core teaching that we find in so much of the Dharma. The Buddha challenges us to practice metta, which is cultivating goodwill for ourselves and others, but also karuna, which is compassion, which is the awareness of other suffering and the desire to alleviate it. These are some of the foundational teachings of the Buddha. And in Buddhism, many of us understand the idea of a bodhisattva as a being who dedicates their entire life to helping others and to ease their suffering. And in our modern world today, where animal suffering is so great, how can we walk this path of the Buddha and the Bodhisattva? What choices can we make today to live in alignment with some of these core teachings, right? So this is the question. What does it mean to walk the path of compassion, to represent the Dharma in our everyday lives? The world watches the Buddhists. When I first got this job, I told my mom I'm going to be working with Dharma Voices for Animals, and she was all like, what is that? Well, we try to talk about compassion, you know? And there's a great line in the Dhammapada that came to mind. And it's basically like, are you going to walk the walk or talk the talk? That's what this is saying. You can recite many scriptures, but if you do not follow those scriptures, you're like a cow herder counting someone else's cows. However, someone who does not know many scriptures, but is able to practice the Dharma, this is one who lives with love, right? So these are some really powerful, beautiful teachings the Buddha gives us in the Dhammapada. So in the Dhammapada, the Buddha almost also talks about how all beings fear death, all beings love life. Therefore, one should not slay, nor cause to slay. And in Buddhism, a sentient being, we're taught, is anybody who can feel. Any being who has a central nervous system, a spinal cord, fear, flight, eyeballs, the ability to run, is a sentient being, and we're called to love them all equally. That is our task, to love all beings with infinite love, motherly love. So the question I'm going to ask now, and I'm going to bring this up again as we go through this, what does cause to slay mean to us today in 2025? Not 2,500 years ago, but today in 2025. So I want to introduce a couple psychological terms that I think will help us navigate this topic. Many of you might have heard of this word, you might not have, but it's called speciesism. And I love this picture of odd animal couples. I've loved odd animal couples for a long time. When I was a kid, there was a story about a hound dog and an orangutan that hung out together. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. Best friends. When you see a cat and a bird, best friends, a deer and a dog, whatever. Odd animal couples are some of my favorites, you know? And speciesism is this, I've heard it called the first form of hatred that we're taught. We're often taught this as young children. This animal deserves our love. This animal is what we eat, you know? And it's described as one species matters more than another's, and it allows us to love some animals and ignore others. When we know all of these animals have the same similar feelings and have what do they say? Similar in all the ways that matter. Maybe not identical to us, but we're all the same in the same way that we can feel feelings and feel fear. And speciesism is how we learn to love a dog and eat a pig, put simply, right? To rescue a cat, but wear a cow. It's an invisible conditioning that we're taught. And truthfully, it's cultural brainwashing and it's conditioning. We were taught to look away as kids. I know as a child, I loved animals in a way that was really special. And I was terrified to eat a hamburger. And after years of being teased and made fun of, I finally ate a burger. And then I became a burger fanatic and barbecue eater. But at first, I didn't want to do that. It did not. I loved my cow. I had a little plastic toy cow I carried with me everywhere. I loved my cow. I didn't want to eat a burger, but I was brainwashed into thinking I could do it. You know, it was there naturally for me. Maybe not for everybody, but sometimes. So as we go through this talk tonight, I want to just introduce one more kind of psychological topic. It's called cognitive dissonance. And cognitive dissonance is a term that is used to describe a discomfort, confusion, stress that can happen when I have a belief system here and I'm being presented with ideas that really are challenging my belief system. And signs of cognitive dissonance: feeling stressed, anxious, or uneasy, justifying or making excuses to align your actions with your beliefs, avoiding or dismissing information that challenges your beliefs, feeling guilty or shame. So all of these things can come up, and I would watch this when I would present my talk as a park ranger. People would start rubbing the back of their necks and, you know, looking at their watches when I would start talking about some of these facts. They're not easy to talk about. But the Buddha left his palace. It was uncomfortable. Can you guys I'm going to challenge you to sit through some of this uncomfortable information tonight. I promise you, I'm not going to show any videos. I'm not going to present any overly graphic pictures. I'm simply going to explain to you with words what animals live through. And I promise not to traumatize you. I understand this is a Buddhist gathering, and I want to raise the awareness, but I don't want people to leave in the middle of this talk because the information is too hard to handle. So I crafted this message in a way that I hope is not going to cause anyone to want to run away. I challenge you, maybe a better word is I hope you can find your compassion and walk this path with me tonight, and know that I'm not here to try to traumatize anyone. I'm here to try to help you understand what animals are going through. So this truly is a story about love. And I love this picture of this little boy with his dog. I've loved dogs my whole life. My first dog was named Audrey. Then I had a dog named Sport. Got two little doggies in the back. 17 years ago, a dog mine named Frankie helped me awaken to this some of these Buddhist teachings. And this really is a story about love and what it means to extend this love to all beings, not just our pets and animals we're familiar with. So I want to pause for 1 second and have you guys maybe close your eyes or just feel the feeling if you've ever had an animal you loved, or if there's an animal you simply love watching on TV, like a wild animal. I saw one of the coolest beings I've ever witnessed in my life last week on an ocean documentary. It's called a cuttlefish. And they turn these crazy colors. They look like an alien spaceship. And I watched this like twice. I was having a spiritual experience. I loved that animal so much. It was so amazing to see it doing all these crazy things. So we have this natural compassion. Some of us have it stronger than others, but I want you to try to pause and think about an animal you've loved and connect with that compassion. Because honestly, it's who we truly are. We have this deep within us. As the Buddha said, we all have Buddha nature deep within us. We just have to water these seeds of compassion and they become stronger. So I'm awakening now to modern animal agriculture and this animal suffering that goes on in there. So I'm going to walk through a couple things here. So we all have this idea of an idyllic farm where the cows and the pigs and the chickens, maybe like in the movie Babe, they're all running around in the grass and enjoying a beautiful farm. And then the reality of modern animal agriculture is that most animals, 99% of animals that are served in restaurants and in grocery stores, are in confined, really miserable situations. But the thing is, whether the animals we eat come from an idyllic farm where they're raised in the pasture, or if they're raised in a confined area where they have a miserable life, they all go to the same end. Those tiny farms with idyllic, beautiful settings, they ship them to the same slaughterhouses that the cows that are in feedlots are shipped to. And they go through a really traumatic death. Even if they lived a long, beautiful life, they still have a very traumatic ending that usually comes too soon. So I want to talk about welfare laws before we get into the animals themselves, because most people do believe that all animals are protected by certain laws. And the truth is, companion animals are really protected by state and federal anti-cruelty laws. It's illegal to do a lot of things. You can't neglect your animals or kill them without cause. They must receive food. And any sort of cruelty to a companion animal result in fines, possible jail time. However, farmed animals are exempt from all cruelty laws under what's called, quote, standard agricultural practices. So the laws that protect our pets do not protect farm animals. It is legal and normal to cut, burn, mutilate without any sort of pain relief all of these different types of animals in forms of castration, dehorning, debeaking. There's no laws against extreme confinement. There's no transport laws. Animals are stuck on, even if they lived a long, beautiful life next to the ocean in Point Reyes, California, they still get stuck on a truck being shipped to slaughter. And humane treatment really doesn't even apply to a lot of the animals, like birds and fishes don't even receive very much protection at all. So, and we're also given a lot of things that make us feel better. There's these marketing tactics, free range, cage free, humane, grass fed, all of these different marketing tactics. We see pictures of happy animals. I got a picture at the top of cage free. At the top, you envision the chickens running around outside. The reality is that cage free means they're just in a bigger open space. Sometimes they get outside, sometimes they don't. But these laws, or labels, I should say, they're for us. They're not for the animal. They're for the corporations to make us feel better, to keep us confused. There was a story a long time ago, the tobacco industry got outed, and they said, our product is not tobacco, our product is confusion. If we can hire enough doctors to say smoking is healthy, then the doctors who are saying smoking will kill you, people will be confused and they'll just keep smoking. The dairy industry was literally caught using the same tactic in an internal email that was exposed. The dairy industry said the same thing. If we can keep people confused, they'll keep drinking milk, right? So the welfare laws do nothing for farm animals. Okay, so I'm going to walk you guys through a couple different animals. We're going to start with cows. We're going to look at beef cows up on the top of the slide and dairy cows. This is some of the most high-tech, efficient ways that billion-dollar corporations have found to make this as profitable as possible. You see the cows on the feedlot in the top, no grass anywhere in sight, and the dairy cows on the bottom. In this high-tech thing, it turns as they go. They milk them. They lock them in there and milk them more than, I think, twice a day. And the animals live a pretty miserable life. So a beef cow, the title I have on here is born for slaughter. They live 20 to 25 years. They live very short period of time, 12 to 22 months. They're castrated, branded, and dehorned without pain relief. They have strong bonds with their family. They're pulled away. They're raised on feedlots. They're fed a very unnatural diet, so they grow quickly. And then they're transported a long distance before they're slaughtered. So at the bottom of each of these slides, I'm presenting what's considered humane slaughter method. Now, this is the most humane practice that is required to ease the animal's distress. So cows, beef cows and dairy cows both go through the same humane slaughter practice, which typically means they're stunned with a bolt gun. If you've seen one of these, it's an air compressor gun with basically a very powerful hammer type device. And as the cows are lined up one at a time in this tight area, the worker has to hit them on the top of the head with this compressor, and it cracks their skull, so they shake and they stun. They're shackled by their ankle and hoisted upside down, and their throat is cut so they can bleed out. So this is some of the stuff that's hard to listen to. I'm not going to get any more graphic than that. Okay, guys, I hope that's not too much. I just want you to know what the animals go through. So that is the most humane method. And these animals witness animals in front of them being slaughtered. They smell it, and they scream, and they fight for their life. It is truly horrific to watch, and I've done that. We're going to talk about dairy cows now. Cows are very maternal. They give birth to these babies that they gestate for 9 months, just like all other mammals. The natural lifespan of a dairy cow is 20 to 25 years, but they're killed after 4 to 6 years. I heard a Buddhist meditation teacher say there's more suffering in a glass of milk than there is in a steak. As we saw on the previous slide, beef cattle live maybe 12 to 22 months. Dairy cows are reimpregnated year after year after year. And once their milk production drops, they're sent to slaughter. So they have a baby, the baby's taken from them. If you've seen these videos of a mama cow chasing the guy, taking her baby away, the mom cries for a couple days for her baby, and she goes through this again and again. The babies are taken and put into these little hutches and given some milk and some feed, but they're taken from their mother almost immediately. And that's what happens to the females. The baby males are usually shot on their first day of life because people don't eat veal as much because veal is a little taboo. They used to stick them in a veal crate where they would lock them in place for 8 weeks so the meat would be soft for veal. So dairy is far more cruel than anybody ever imagines. And the billions of dollars that the dairy industry spends to make us think that these animals are happy is really tragic. So vegetarianism with the use of dairy supports all of this. Many people think I'm drinking milk, I'm not hurting an animal. But as I said, there's more suffering in a glass of milk than in a steak. So once again, the same method applies with humane slaughter, the captive bolt, the hoisting by the ankle, and the bleeding by cutting the neck. And a lot of times these animals fight for their life, and the captive bolt gun does not work, so their throats are slit while they're still conscious. So, and we estimate there's estimated about 300 million beef and dairy cows killed per year worldwide. 300 million. So some cute facts about cows. I got some happy cows on here. There's a mama with her baby. I think this is a happy cow in the Swiss Alps somewhere in the sunshine. Cows are like any other animal, like dogs. They form lifelong friendships. They nurse their calves. They can remember faces, solve problems, and enjoy intellectual challenges. They can hold grudges, been documented. And they love music. And they can play with balls. I was going to show a video of a cow playing with a ball, but I don't want to make the presentation too long. But each cow has a unique personality. And we know most of this because there's so many animal sanctuaries now. I'm going to talk about that at the end. Sanctuaries, cows have family groups and dynamics. So they're sweet and lovely creatures, and they deserve a sweet life. The next animal I want to go into real quick is pigs. Pigs are very intelligent and emotional creatures. This is a picture of a sow in her gestation crate, unable to move. Pigs really do have a horrible treatment. They're imprisoned. I have a couple pictures of cows. This is standard industry practice. If they're in a normal, like most pigs are in confined areas, what they do is they walk by when they're close to slaughter, when they're ready to go, and they spray paint them over their heads. So you can see the pigs on the bottom are ready for slaughter. Their natural lifespan is 10 to 15 years, and pigs are slaughtered at just 5 to 6 months. So they're just babies, really like little dogs. Piglets are castrated and tail docked. They have a practice if a piglet is suffering, the easiest way to get rid of the pig is by an industry standard practice, which is acceptable. It's called thumping, where they grab the piglet by the hind legs and they hit the head on the ground to put them out of their misery if they're not going to survive, or if they're too small. They're given no space. They're stuck in gestation crates, and they get infected and they have these ulcers. Most people don't know this, but the humane standard for slaughtering pigs in the United States and Australia and the UK is by gas chambers. Most people haven't heard of gas chambers except during the Holocaust. But I've seen the videos of the pigs going into gas chambers, and it is not humane. This footage was released, and there's been a big backlash against this. It causes extreme panic, burning of the lungs, and they suffocate from the inside out, just like if you and I were stuck in a crate and suffocated with CO2 gas. It is horrific. And if they don't go through that, they still get the bolt to the head and the knife to the throat. So even if they're raised in a beautiful pasture, they still go to the same slaughterhouse as all the rest of the pigs. So pigs are amazing. They're as intelligent as a 3-year-old child. They say they're smarter than dogs. We have some friends that work at a pig sanctuary, and they have amazing stories of pigs that have been there for 15 years, and they play and they decorate their bed areas. They have sex for fun, even when they're not in heat. So they're a lot like a lot of other mammals, like humans, and they can recognize themselves. They dream at night, snuggle when they're with their companions. They have 20 different distinct vocalizations. And contrary to belief, they're very, very clean animals. They don't want to live in their poop and mud, but that's where they're placed. So, okay, we've got 2 down. We got a couple left to go. Chickens are some of the most abused animals on the planet. The last 2 animals we looked at, people can feel them a little bit. They're mammals. They look like a dog. They're 4-legged. So they have more protection laws. They try to feel better about some of these things, but chickens really have it the worst. And they're predominantly the amount of meat that people eat is from chicken. 90% of meat consumed on the planet is from chicken. And chickens have the worst lifespan. They live 8 to 10 years, but they only live about 6 months. They have a horrible life. They grow super fast. They're in crowded areas. They live in thousands of tons of poop, so they have ammonia burns in their lungs. Because the male chicks, just like in the dairy industry, the males are useless. In the chicken industry, the males are useless. In the egg industry, so they're ground up on their first day of life. It's the only graphic image I have in this slideshow is a picture of the macerator. At the top, they separate the boy chicks on day one, and they're ground up alive, and that sometimes is fed back to chickens or pigs as well. So most chickens never feel the grass, and once again, vegetarianism, by eating eggs, you're supporting what the chickens go through, and also what the male chicks have to go through. So wild chickens lay 12 eggs a year. Domesticated chickens can lay up to 300 eggs a year. And every time they lay an egg, it depletes them of calcium, and it's painful. That's why they squawk and squabble. So even if you have backyard eggs, those are selectively bred birds that have been designed to lay a lot of eggs, and it's very, very draining and demanding on the animal. So it's not a natural thing for a chicken to lay that many eggs. So, and the humane slaughter for chickens is what's called a live shackle method. If you look at the bottom picture, you can see these birds are fully aware of what's happening. They weigh so much that they can barely walk, and then they're hung by their legs, and they flap their wings, but they can't get away. And they're on a conveyor belt that goes through a stunning bath, which is an electrified water bath, but it doesn't stun all of them. And then the next thing they take them through is a saw blade that cuts their throats. So a lot of these birds are not stunned when they go through the saw blade, and they have a horrible, right after the saw blade, they're dunked into boiling water to get the feathers off. So chickens really struggle through a horrible life. The method of killing them, they're trying to kill so many at a time. It's very ineffective, and many of them really have a horrible death while they're conscious. So chickens can recognize up to 100 faces, 30 different types of vocalizations. I have pictures of chickens on some sanctuaries here. I went to a sanctuary and got to meet some chickens, and the lady there told us about each one of these chickens and what their daily routine was and how they lived. And this one was the boss of that one, and that one was the boss of this one. They had their individual unique ways of doing everything. They had social hierarchies, and they've been observed having REM sleep. So we know that they have dreams, and they can count and understand basic arithmetic. So these are, once again, intelligent, emotional creatures. The last group I'm going to get into is fish and aquatic species. Simply put, the least protected and most exploited beings on Earth are fish and aquatic species. Billions are caught. Bycatch from ocean causes so much death. Wild caught fish, they're usually suffocated or gutted alive. And then you have farm fish, which live in a very tight, confined space. They're full of antibiotics. They suffer from parasites, disease, poor water quality. We know that fish feel pain. It's been proven again and again. We know that they form bonds. They have personalities. They have sentience. But because they're even less like us than chickens, they're in the water. We can't see them. They have no protection. And the ocean is really being depleted dramatically. So, okay, so I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. And I presented to you guys some ideas of, I presented to you 4 different species, with aquatic species being a wide variety. But I presented to you with each of those species what's been termed humane slaughter by animal agriculture. And the question I want to ask is, can slaughter ever be humane? And I looked this up just so I could have this down here. Slaughter means a few different things, but what applies here is that slaughter means to kill an animal for meat. Humane means to show kindness, care, and sympathy towards others, especially those who are suffering. So how can we show kindness and kill? That is the question. We get these humane ideas brought into us. It's a marketing tactic to try to make us feel better, but it does nothing for the animals. There truly is no kind way to kill someone who wants to live. And if you see these animals, they want to live. They do not want to die. So the last tough topic I'm going to get into before I get into some spiritual stuff is slaughterhouse workers. Now, if you've gotten to this point, and I've had conversations with people where they're like, yeah, whatever, animals, right? Well, we could talk about the human impact of this. Has anybody ever wanted to work in a slaughterhouse? And how do we as Buddhists practice right livelihood on the Noble Eightfold Path by supporting a type of work like this? This directly violates a core teaching of the Buddha. Right livelihood means not engaging in or supporting professions that cause harm to living beings. Slaughterhouse workers have a horrible existence. I've watched documentaries and exposés and interviews with these workers, and the stories they tell and what they go through is truly traumatic. They're often immigrants, people living in poverty. Oftentimes, slaughterhouses are open in poor areas. You don't see slaughterhouses in Beverly Hills. You see them in very impoverished areas where there's not many jobs. And often they prey on convicted felons because they get them to work there. These people that maybe have a violent past, and then they can't quit because their parole officer has to they have to stay or they have to go back into jail. That was a story I heard from one of the guys on this documentary. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in America. Repetitive high killing. It causes trauma to these guys, and it's called perpetrator-induced PTSD. Slaughterhouse workers have the highest rates of suicide, drug and alcohol addiction, domestic abuse of any job in the world. If this was your job to go all day and cut the throats of animals, what would it do to you? How could it change you? And this is why when there's undercover footage of this, you see these people have lost their mind. They already are in a fragile state, and they have to dehumanize and depersonalize themselves so much that they're kicking and beating these animals because the only way they can handle is this violence is to be extreme with it. So it's brutal. And often when they're trying to raise questions, they're fired or they could be deported. So it's some of the most traumatic part of this whole story is the slaughterhouse workers. So, okay, we've gotten through the tough stuff. And I have a slide here with Avalokiteshvara, known as Chenrezig in Tibetan or Vajrayana Buddhism, and Kuan Yin in the Asian cultures. These are the bodhisattvas of compassion. And they were said that these bodhisattvas could hear the cries of the world. And the idea of Avalokiteshvara originated in northern India around the 3rd century, so a long time ago, when the cries of the world were much quieter than they are now. Every year, we kill over 90 billion land animals and trillions of aquatic animals. The suffering is beyond massive. And I think about, as a Buddhist who practices metta, as a Buddhist who thinks about the fact that Shakyamuni Buddha was sent here on a beam of light into a dark world, I think about what vibration this planet sends out into the cosmos, with billions of animals being slaughtered every year for one species to have taste pleasures. And it truly makes me want to cry. In Mahayana Buddhism, it's Avalokiteshvara. May we have the courage to listen to these cries. May we have the courage, I said, to listen to these cries and the compassion to respond. Because what is happening is beyond our scope. It is truly a tragic situation. And for every person that does not support this, the vibration changes. And we can change the planet. So let's talk real quick about what did the Buddha say? I've had this conversation with many people over the years. People say the Buddha ate meat, the Buddha didn't eat meat. There's a big confusion if Buddha died eating mushrooms or if he died eating pig flesh. I'm of the camp that it's misinterpreted and that the Buddha had some poisoned mushrooms when he passed. How could he talk about the precepts for 45 years and compassion and then eat meat? I don't know. This is a hotly debated topic, but there are some sutras where the Buddha was very clear. On his deathbed in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha said, even if meat is given in faith, it is like eating your own child's flesh. In the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha said, meat eating I have not permitted, do not permit, and will not permit. In the Surangama Sutra, the Buddha said, those who eat meat cut off great compassion. So the Buddha did speak for animals. I choose to believe that maybe some meat-eating Buddhists interpreted these things and that maybe he was walking that talk, but we know that the Buddhists had to beg for food. The monks had to walk and take alms. And I'm going to get to that in one sec. But I want to talk real quick about Buddhist teachers walking this path. This is a great book. I read this book a long time ago from Chatral Rinpoche. It's called Compassionate Action. Beautiful book. I also love Thich Nhat Hanh, his book called The Heart of the Buddha's Teachings. Thai, may you rest in peace with the Buddhas. He passed away a couple years ago as well. Chatral Rinpoche said, I made a vow to never eat meat again in Bodh Gaya. Thich Nhat Hanh has a great video on YouTube, Why Vegetarianism is Not Enough. He said the beauty of living in harmony with the cosmos by not eating animals is very powerful. And that by eating meat, we're eating the flesh of our own children. Philip Roshi, how can we speak of loving kindness while still eating animals? And Patrul Rinpoche, meat is a medicine for great ignorance. I do know that Lama Zopa, there's some people that said Lama Zopa did not eat meat. He definitely loved animals. I know he's the tradition at the Land of Medicine Buddha. He's their founding teacher. And these teachers remind us that living compassion is possible, right? So now let's look at a couple different things and ask ourselves some questions. What if we just set aside, what if we just showed up right here today and we said, okay, none of us are Buddhists, but let's just look at the facts of what's happening, right? In our modern supply and demand-based economy, industrialized society, we don't kill animals ourselves, but we buy them pre-packaged for us. Meat, dairy, and eggs are packaged behind closed doors. We don't get to see anything. We eat prepared food in restaurants without thinking about it. We rely on people to do this work for us. So we must ask ourselves today in 2025, the question I started with is, what does cause to slay mean now in a world of supermarkets, convenience, and labels? We don't see the violence because it's behind closed doors, but with supply and demand economics, we're still paying for them. I have a picture here of a nice couple. I tried to figure out what they were buying. It looks like she has some cauliflower, or maybe he has some kale. I wasn't sure what they were shopping for, but this is a consumer-based economy. That's where we all live. Maybe Sunyo doesn't, but the rest of us do. And then we have the Buddhists below that, walking in not a supply and demand economy, in a begging economy where they walk and they take alms. So just to explore this a little deeper, because this is the sticking point that I get to when I've had this conversation with people at times, and we have to get our head around the idea that we vote with our dollars. That's a quote I heard a long time ago, not even applying to animal agriculture, but whatever you buy is what you're supporting. There's a lot of protests going on around different companies and their products, and people are protesting this because it means that this is tied to that. So in a supply and demand economy, what we purchase, we're voting for. Definitions that apply to this topic: in a supply and demand economy, demand increases supply. Very simply, if I buy an animal product, that animal product will be replaced with another animal product because there's less on the shelf. This is a great time to look at the definition of buying versus begging. When we buy something, the definition is we obtain it in exchange for payment, right? Now, begging, as the Buddhists do on their alms rounds, the community supports them with loving practice. Now, begging is when you ask for something as charity. It's given to you. You're not saying, I'm voting for this. You're begging for a gift, right? Now, if we go back 2,500 years, the Buddha did say, you are not permitted to eat an animal that you know was killed for you. However, when you're making your alms rounds, hopefully, if we're in a new area, the community will learn that we don't support killing and they won't feed us meat. So after the Sangha has settled and the community has been taught the Dharma, we hope the community would not serve us meat. Because if an animal has been killed specifically for us, we may not partake. In a supply and demand economy, if there's a burger sitting on the shelf and I buy that burger, I am supporting that slaughterhouse worker. I'm paying for that animal's suffering with my money. That is simple law of economics and the law of karma, very clearly. By practicing compassion when we shop, it's a very simple procedure. With one hand, I could buy dairy milk, but with this hand, I could just buy oat milk. I heard someone say this is a passive action that requires no effort on our part except to adjust our taste pleasures. We have to simply just start different taste pleasures. Enjoy the taste of oat milk over dairy milk. Enjoy the taste of a different type of burger. And now the thing is, in this plant-based economy, 15 years ago, you go to the grocery store, you might see soy milk. I don't know where you guys are, but where I am in California, I go to the grocery store, cashew milk, oat milk, almond milk, soy milk, every milk you could imagine. Burgers, tacos, hot dogs, every type of junk food you could imagine. Never mind, I could just go to the bulk section and buy split peas and quinoa and make a delicious, healthy meal. But the options are outstanding now. They even have vegan bacon out there. So we must ask ourselves if our pleasures of our taste buds are more important than the human and animal suffering that goes into these choices. When we can get so many of those same tastes and textures from plant-based products, why would we support an animal-based product? So I hope I drove that home. This was a slide I spent a lot of time on. The idea so many times I hear when I have this conversation with Buddhists is, well, the Buddha this and that, and we're not begging, we're buying. So we're in a different situation here. So the good news, okay, you guys, you made it through everything that I had to present. And the good news is I got a couple pigs on a sanctuary here. The good news is we can choose love. The last idea I want to plant in your minds is that during the Buddha's time, the global population was around 100 million people. They didn't have animal farms. There's a teaching in Shantideva where he says, we steal the lives of fishes and deers. They were hunting for food. They maybe had a cow, but they did not have farms. So the population there was 100 million. Now the population is 8 billion. And as I said earlier, 90 billion animals and trillions of sea animals are killed every year. The scale of the suffering is beyond imagination. And we must respond with a heart that's big enough to hold this suffering and to embrace this suffering and to turn it into compassion and love. So the last question I would pose to you guys, and I said this at the end of my last talk on the environment, if the Buddha were here today in our presence and he saw the reality of what is happening with these animals, would he say we are walking with compassion if we support these things? More importantly, would the Buddha go shopping and buy an animal-based product or a plant-based product? The path is clear for us. Less harm and more compassion is the way out of this. Every plant-based meal changes this planet, changes so much suffering. Every act of kindness ripples outward, and we can change, and we already are changing. The plant-based lifestyle is the fastest growing lifestyle in the history of the earth. Veganuary started 14 years ago with like 100,000 people. 2 years ago, it was 1 million people. And oh my God, I blanked. How many was it this past year? I think it was 20 million people signed up for January this last year. Maybe someone could Google that. Well, it's exploding. The numbers in the UK and the EU, Australia, the Nordic countries, Germany are skyrocketing. In the United States, we're like 5 times more than we used to be, but we're still not keeping up with some of these other countries. So change is happening and we're making it happen. So if everybody could take a screenshot of this slide, I tried to figure out how to cut down on this. There are so many resources. I couldn't help myself but to overload this. And this presentation can be sent to you as well in the form of a PDF. If you want these, I'll send that to you. The Zoom is going to be recorded as well. But take a snapshot of this. The Buddha bore witness to the suffering. 25.8 million people celebrated in January. That's a big jump from 1 million a couple years ago. I thought it was in the 20s. Thank you, Leah. So the Buddha saw the suffering and had to make a change. My experience as someone who's been on this path is that I've watched Earthlings, I watched Dominion, I've watched all of these documentaries, but until you see the animal and the true suffering, you will never believe it, and you will always think that this is just a choice you can make. When you see the animal and you see the victim, it changes you from the inside out. I made a commitment to never support it in any form, any fashion whatsoever. The exploitation of animals is off from my ethical standpoint. I do not participate in it whatsoever. So there's a great YouTube talk from Gary Yourofsky, if you haven't heard of him. Powerful speech. There's a quick one, Dairy is Scary, very short, not easy to watch. There's plant-based meal support and planners. I just mentioned for January, Challenge 22. There's a ton of books. Melanie Joy has a great book. If you haven't heard of Melanie Joy, she has a great theory called Carnism. She has a website called Beyond Carnism. There's a lot of support out there. I'm going to go to the next slide. I hope you guys got a screenshot of that. And I want to pause and dedicate the merit, the energy, the love we have all created here tonight for all beings. For the liberation of all beings. May all beings be free from fear. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings be loved and no longer forgotten. This talk was my love letter to the animals. And it was their cry for you to help them. And I hope you can receive it. Thank you guys so much for listening. We're going to open up for questions and answers now, and anyone want to talk. And the last slide here is how DVA can support you and your Dharma Center. A few of you know DVA. We have a great website with tons of really great resources. We have a monthly meditation sangha. I mentioned that earlier. Free consulting with plant-based nutrition. And also support if your Dharma Center wants to transition to a more plant-based meals. We have awards that are going towards that. We have also a compassion leadership thing. You could also just be a member of our group. So thank you guys so much for listening. I'm deeply grateful that you stuck it out with me. And here, Charlie wants to say hi. This is one of our boys, Char Char. He saw my dad getting emotional. He wanted to come say hi. Okay, so thank you guys. Let's open it up for anyone that has questions and go from there. So let me see here. I think, how would this, Katie, should I go off screen? I guess I could just talk to this. Well, I'm talking to this screen.
Or I think you can unshare if you want to.
Okay, I can stop share. And now I'm just me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. I can get off of this one. It was nice. I had the I had my iPad going so I could kind of see you guys and make sure I wasn't talking to an empty room. So, whoops. What am I doing there? Got a little light here. There, how's that? Okay, so yeah, so anybody that wants to share, I'd see Dave has your hand raised. Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks, Forrest. That was great presentation, really.
Thank you so much, Dave. I mean, it means a lot.
I don't know if anyone here needs to be persuaded, but it was persuasive. I'm really glad we have Bhikkhu, Sunyo Bhikkhu here. Just sort of had a question related to the place that bhikkhus and bhikkhunis play, especially, or that they have in Theravadan Buddhist circles. This issue that we're talking about tonight is one that is, at least in Theravadan Buddhism, in my experience, is really sort of, by monastics anyway, tiptoed around in certain ways. And there are certain things that the monks and the nuns I've heard from don't feel comfortable addressing directly when it comes to advocating for a less cruel diet based on ethics, based on holistic karuna. So I'm wondering if you could tell us what your experience might be with this venerable, and if you see that there's going to be space in the future, especially for Theravadan monastics, to be more direct, given their very influential places, speaking with lay people and the limited persuasion that lay teachers can have on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave, and also Forrest and everybody for being here. Can you hear me okay, by the way? Yeah, sometimes my microphone has issues. Yeah, that's a very good question, Dave, about how Theravada monastics relate to animal welfare, and especially when it comes to diet. And I actually have experienced the same thing, and that's why I wanted to join this meeting. And I also make sure to connect to vegan people here in Australia, vegan Buddhists, because even in the monastery where I live, I am only one of the few vegans, and it can be very challenging, especially when you can't buy your own food and you have to depend on what you call begging for us. And I think there should be in the future more opportunities or more willingness from monastics as well to challenge these issues. And it's a bit of a, I think they call it a catch-22, because the monastics sort of depend on what the lay people bring, and we're also not really supposed to demand certain foods from them. But we can always hint, and that's what I am trying my best to do. I'll keep it at that, because actually I have to go on alms round right now, and I'm already a bit late, so I hope I'll still be on time, and otherwise I don't get any food for today. So thank you all so much for being here and being who you are and what you do. This really helped me out.
Thank you, Senyo, for coming.
Keep inspired.
Yeah,
and
thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to reach out for whatever reason, just to say hi or whatever, I'll put my email in the chat. And I hope to see you all again.
Sounds great. Sunyo, I'll email you, Sunyo. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you for asking that question, Dave. Yeah, that's oh man, that's tragic to hear that he's in a monastery where he's isolated like that. That must be difficult. So who else would like to share about anything you learned or any questions you have, or just a thought, anything? I love feedback. One thing, as a park ranger, often I would give a talk and then everyone would run from me. So I like getting feedback and, questions, or anybody found something inaccurate, or it's totally open. I'm open to feedback. And if I did get feedback as a park ranger, it was often very, very, you can't say that type of stuff. So I'm happy I can handle it, you guys. I'm used to it. So please share anything openly.
Oh, I feel bad. I forgot to ask you if you would like some tea.
Yeah, so
What
that's
kind
just
would
my
you
mom.
like?
She's visiting
Oh,
from,
sorry.
from Toronto. I'm in Montreal. I'm feeling very sad and angry because I just found out that that boy in the 17-year-old boy with autism and cerebral palsy who was in the States, he was non-speaking. He was shot several times and then he died today from his injuries. That the police just, yeah, oh, they said, oh, he was dangerous. He had a knife. No, he had apraxia, which means that he might be reaching for one thing but accidentally picked something else up. And then when they start yelling in his face, they start yelling at him, of course, and start shooting at him without even asking him questions, and everybody starts yelling. Of course, he's going to be gripping it because he's going to be anxious. He's going to freeze up. They're absolutely, the amount of, as an autistic person myself, I'm just absolutely furious with it. I've had negative encounters with police, but I'm alive because I'm white. And, you know, reading about this boy, he was, you know, I in Toronto, the reason I moved out of Toronto was because I had met this man who was autistic and had cerebral palsy. He spoke, but he, you know, like this boy, this guy was Italian, so he had dark hair and similar complexion to this boy who is Puerto Rican boy who was killed. And it kind of reminds me a little bit of this guy from Toronto. And it makes me angry and upset and just brings back a lot of memories. But I'm upset for him. I'm upset for his family. It brings back, it triggers a lot of memories for me, a lot of hurt that I've had in my past. It's just really, and it's just that the police file is just absolutely brutal. It's horrible. And honestly, they didn't even ask any questions. Why would they have thought he was a threat anyway? That the police were like several meters away. They were like 50 meters away from him. There's no way he would have posed any danger to the police, and I don't even think he would have posed any danger to his family. His family wasn't worried. They didn't call police. It was just I think one of the neighbors who was annoyed with him. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Nicole. I'm also autistic. I'm on the spectrum myself. So thank you for opening up to us about that. And that's just a tragic, horrible story. Just so sad.
It's interesting you said that you're also autistic. Are you a monk or anything?
No, I've just been practicing as a lay person. I've read some stories about theories that the Buddha had so many autistic traits as a child, and the sequences and the numbers and everything. If you look up was Shakyamuni, was Gautama autistic, you can find a lot of really amazing articles about how.
Yeah, I want to.
Yeah, so he was. Anyway, I find that Buddhism really helps calm me down. Getting to a quiet place and studying numbers of lists and these things is very, very helpful. So, but no, I'm not a monk. I just am
connect with other autistic people who are interested in faith and who are also vegan, because it's very hard to find, like, even fundraisers for Victor Perez. A lot of them are you know, involve meat eating, and it's like, why would you use violence to fundraise for something against violence? It's very strange.
Yes, I agree.
It's
yeah,
very
the DVA has a monthly meditation group for animal activists is what it's called, and everybody there, most of the people there are vegan. So if anybody is interested in joining that as a support group, I don't know of any autistic vegan meetups, but I think there's a lot of overlap with neurodivergence and Buddhist practice, and neurodivergent with vegans as well. And I live in a van. In the van life community, there's a whole lot of neurodivergence. People think differently when we live in a van. It's a cool way to live, you know. So, but
yeah, that's the thing. I would agree that. I think Yeshua or Jesus, I think is autistic as well. I mean, there's a lot of traits. I mean,
all of the best ones.
Yeah. Also, like what ultimately resulted in the crucifixion was that he had a meltdown and freaked out about them killing animals in the temple.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Nicole, can you hang out for a little bit? You and I could connect more about that, but I don't know if other people might want to talk just a little bit about the talk that we gave tonight. But you and I could talk more, if let other people share, and then we could come back to our little thing. that cool? Thank you for that. Does anybody else have any thoughts or things they want to share?
Just quickly, I did put DVA's link to our next meditation retreat. It's on April 27th, if anyone's interested. That link's in the chat.
Thank you, Katie. Also, Leah, I believe this is confirmed. April 25th is part 3 of our talk DVA is going to be doing. So the first talk I gave was on the environment. That's available on Zoom. And then tonight was focused on animals. And then the third part of the talk is going to be given by Dr. Alan Kornberg on April 25th. For anyone that's interested in thriving on a plant-based diet, the talk that night, it will begin a little earlier because he's in Boston. So it's going to be 5:30. Lee, I sent you his information and confirmed that. I just want to I had the right date, right? Sweet. Okay, cool. And then to wrap all of this up, July 4th, 5th, and 6th at the Land of Medicine Buddha is going to be a mindfulness meditation that's going to be guided by Bob Stahl. He's been practicing Buddhism for his whole life, I think, a long time. He's going to be guiding a meditation retreat focused on the practice of non-harming and what it means to be compassionate and how we can live compassionately in this world and our relationship with animals. It's going to be a really beautiful weekend, July 4th, 5th, and 6th. Get away from the fireworks. If you guys have not been to the Land of Medicine Buddha, it is a beautiful journey to get there. You go through this canyon of beautiful redwood trees. My first time there had just been like heavy rain. So there was a creek and a waterfall, and the whole little canyon was alive and vibrant with water rushing. And you go up the steep hill, and then you get up there, and there's the beautiful Land of Medicine Buddha location and the redwood trees with the stupa and everything. So the giant wheel. So anyway, promote both of those. We'll promote those on our site, and there'll be links to that. So did anybody else have any questions or comments around the talk? John, did you have anything? I see Dave, you got your hand up, but I'll ask John, did you want to have any thoughts or any feedback or anything?
Oh, this John? I
Yeah.
think I'm the only John.
Yeah, you're the John.
Yeah. Well, this whole discussion kind of remind me of some of the videos I watched right around the time that I went vegan back in June of 2009. And just how heartbreaking it was to witness that stuff. Yeah. I've never gone back as far as, eating animal products or any of that stuff. I've never had a desire to go back that I can remember after the initial 3 months. But yeah, it's funny how over time you can kind of put it out of your mind. But the suffering continues. I'm just glad that at least I'm saving 100 animals a year by being vegan. But yeah, anyway.
Thank you,
Thanks
John,
for the reminders.
Yeah,
There's probably more I could be doing.
Well, you're here tonight, man. That's obviously a big deal that you're here tonight, and you're doing something every day by changing the energy around you by the choices you're making. So thank you for being compassionate, and thank you for hanging out with us tonight and participating. And yeah, I knew I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be talking to people who are already on board or not on board, but I got to give this presentation as though my mom, who I'm trying to get on board, would possibly listen to this. I don't want to give too much, but you got to give enough. It's like a fine line of walking this, it's a tricky balance. And I hope I know this is very traumatizing for me. This presentation, I mean, 3 days ago, I was having meltdowns, putting this together because I know this stuff and I say this stuff, but I've done it in different environments, but preparing this presentation was not easy. I'll just leave it at that. So, putting it all
Oh,
on,
and
walking through it. So
can I just add
yeah,
one thing? I guess one thing that sort of deterred me from doing anything further than just, controlling my own, what I eat, is the fact that I felt like in the beginning when I first went vegan, I was very pushy, and I probably pushed people away, desperately trying to convert people to veganism because I just felt like it was such an important issue and such, obviously such suffering out there. And I just felt like I didn't want to push people away anymore, but I'm learning more, there's more skillful ways of, I don't know. I'm not sure how to like um, deal with that sometimes, but maybe there is more that I could be doing. I guess lately it's just been trying to be a good example, and it's been amazing at times. People will just come up to me and ask how to go vegan, and um, that's I don't know. I've just been sort of taking the gentle approach.
yeah.
I know that's not everybody's preference in handling this, but
Well, no one wants to be yelled at by a vegan, that's for sure.
I found that out
Yeah.
the hard way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Melanie Joy,
and
Beyond Carnism, has some really great stuff. There's a YouTube channel called Beyond Carnism, and it's
mhm.
it really is, it's great. Like I mentioned, my mother, my mom has watched some of this with me, so she can better understand me, and it's a great way to share this with others. That's in the non-confrontational way. Sometimes,
Yeah,
sometimes it's just confrontational, even when you don't want it to be. That's part of what Melanie Joy talks about. So, um, but yeah,
yeah. I've had the most success when I just focus on the good in people and try and build bridges and make sure that I'm not building walls with
yes, that's a
people.
great way of looking at
Because
it.
whenever I built walls, like even if it was unconscious, then it's not worked out,
Yeah,
and in fact made things worse.
yeah,
And the one thing I don't want to do is make things worse.
yeah.
So
Well, that's
that's
great.
all I got.
Yeah, thanks, man. Um, Yeah, and I know we're coming up on 8 o'clock. So if I know I know Katie is on Vermont time. So anybody that's, whatever in a different time zone, hey, if you guys need to go, by all means, thank you for coming and don't feel obligated to stick around. Um, is is Leah? So when Leah hangs up, the meeting ends. Is that how it goes? Or am I who's the host?
I'm the host, but you're the co-host, so
Okay.
I can head off if
Okay,
y'all
so
want to stay longer, and that should be just fine.
okay, cool. So I could be here. Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't want anyone to feel like they're going to hurt my feelings if they take off because it is 8. We started an hour and a half ago. So if anyone needs to leave, if anyone wants to hang out, I'm going to hang out a little longer. If anyone needs to leave, thank you for coming.